With this pandemic, a lot of men are dealing with pressure that they have never ever experienced before. Today, on The Father Show, counselor Chandra Dew from Community Care Counseling will be providing information that will help us with anxiety and depression. So stay tuned. You don't want to miss it. Chandra, how are you doing today?
I am doing so good. Yes.
Good. I'm so glad to have you back on the show again. And I thank you, even ahead of time, for coming back on the show and providing your expertise in this subject matter because anxiety and depression, and with this pandemic going on, it has really affected a lot of families. So I thank you even for the idea, number one. And I want us to kind of first just tell the audience a little bit about community care counseling.
Okay. Well, um, this is my private practice. And within my private practice, I also have other counselors who are all, they have at least a master's degree and a PhD. And so what we do is we help each other with all of our clients, and we really enjoy helping people, and that's
Hmm.
what I love with the camaraderie of the counselors.
Yeah, and that's good. And I know with this, we were talking before the show, with this pandemic that's going on, a lot of people are becoming depressed and have a lot of anxiety due to, the change of lifestyles and a life that they're normally used to having. So we're gonna dive into this because I got a lot of questions I want to ask, and I know
Okay,
we
no
got
problem.
a limited time, but so I want to kind of cover as much as we can. But so, what are some of the different types or anxiety disorders?
Well, there's what we call generalized anxiety, and that is people who have a hard time controlling their fear. Um, you know, um, and then there's panic attacks. A lot of times, what will happen after the anxiety increases, and then you start to have physical symptoms that get out of control. A lot of times people think when they have a panic attack, they actually are having, heart trouble,
Mm,
but really it's just panicking. There's social anxiety. Some people tend to really have a hard time being around people.
mm-hmm,
Um, there's PTSD. That's another anxiety. It's also in trauma, but
mm,
it's another type of anxiety. There's several others. We have agoraphobia. That's where the anxiety is so bad where you can't leave your home. Sometimes you can't.
mm-hmm,
You feel only safe in a small portion of your home. Um, Acute stress disorder is one. It's kind of the same thing as post traumatic stress
just,
disorder,
mm-hmm,
but yes, but it's in the beginning stage
mm,
where a trauma happened and you have so much stress with that trauma and it's out of control. Now, all these things that I'm talking about, it becomes a disorder because it affects your life.
mm-hmm.
It affects your relationships, affects your job. It affects your life and it makes it difficult for you to handle. Um, so those are the main ones.
Okay. So, how old or young really can a person really become or develop anxieties and depression?
Well, that's a very difficult question because I when I talk to people, a lot of times I hear them say, as far as I can remember, I've had stress, I've had anxiety, and it's usually some type of trauma, or thought process that they develop at a very young age. Um, and so, but when I did some research, a lot of them talk about 3 years old.
Really?
But a lot of times yeah, the answer is, as long as I remember, I suffered with anxiety. Yeah.
Wow. So, what are some of the different signs that
Mhm.
a person can see, either from, out of themselves or a loved one?
Well, a lot of times what happens is there will be things that you will be able to recognize, like I said, excessive worry, excessive fear about something that keeps you from doing the things that you want to do. Restlessness, feeling, very keyed up, fatigue. You're so restless over time, you get tired, you get exhausted. Difficulty concentrating. I see that all the time. Concentrating, you can't think. It messes up with your thought process. Irritability. You're irritable for no reason at all. You're just irritable. Muscle tension. Muscle tension is huge. Almost everybody has muscle tension. Sleep disturbance, it affects your sleep. You can't sleep, your whole 8 hours that you need to sleep. And it can mess with, you can't fall asleep, and when you finally fall asleep, or it can be, you wake up at a certain time every night, and so you don't get a full sleep. Messes, with your cycle of sleep. Yeah.
Yeah.
So those are the main things that you take notice, with anxiety.
And so, when you have anxiety, like you mentioned before, some people feel like they're having a heart attack. And I've heard that before. That is, they can go to the hospital thinking they're having a heart attack, and it really ends up being just anxiety.
Right. Yes.
Is there anything that you know of that can really tell the difference? But I don't want somebody not to go to the hospital because they just might be having a heart attack. So I don't want you to self-diagnose yourself.
Hmm.
But is there
Well,
any difference?
well, what usually happens, especially for those who think they're dying, they're having a heart attack, is after so many times they go to the hospital and they tell them there's nothing wrong with you, and they normally will tell them that they're having an anxiety attack, or a panic attack, and then they usually come in after that. Normally, that's how it works.
Mm. And I know with the PTSD, I, had a friend of mine that I actually had two friends. One died of a suicide and one died of a heart attack. But I know the one that
Mhm.
died of a heart attack was depressed. And I was
Right.
so really happy that he shared that with me.
Mhm.
But it was kind of surprising because I didn't see that in him. Is there any signs that someone can know or see when they have a loved one that is depressed?
When I'm set someone, they'll tell me I covered it up really well.
Mm-hmm.
Most people are over time learn to cover it up.
Mm.
Um, Now there are things that you can take notice. If somebody tends to oversleep or sleep more than they normally sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Or even a lot of people don't think about, just being disinterested. Like they used to have a lot of life and they enjoyed going out or being around people. Then all of a sudden they're isolating
Yeah.
themselves. And a lot of times that's how you can tell, like, if someone has depression. Now, what I do want to tell you, with anxiety, if someone has a lot of anxiety and it's not taken care of over time, it usually will add on to depression.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll have anxiety, and after a while, you'll be kind of overcome with the anxiety, that you get depression. You're upset. You can't handle, everyday things, and so you become depressed over it. And
So,
and on the opposite, so when you're depressed over time, you get anxiety because you're so worried about the depression.
hmm,
So I always tell people, when you recognize something, you want to take care of it.
mm-hmm, okay. And for men, we don't like to come and ask somebody to, help us or talk with. But I know with anxiety and depression, it's important that somebody, they that get this out and talk to somebody about it so that they can overcome it. Because I think the friend of mine that committed suicide, I think he had some anxiety because of some things that were going on in his life. And I think that's why he ended up committing suicide. And nobody knew. I mean, this guy was very well known around
Hmm.
town, and everybody was in total shock when it happened. It was just, we were all just like, no, no, not him. Anybody else, but not him.
Hmm.
So can we can we recognize or identify somebody? Because like you said, I know they can hide it. So I know with the more sleep is one, and
Hmm.
if they are not doing the normal things that they do, but what if they are? What if they are still going out and doing the things that they normally would do, but they walking around depressed? Is there any way to know?
Well, sometimes, like I said, it is for the person, they have to speak up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's usually this if they're not open about it, there may not be a sign, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and that's the hardest part about depression and anxiety. If you don't tell someone what is going on with you, you can have it, and it only gets worse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm. And with this Corvette, I know the anxiety, I would think a lot of men are feeling anxiety because they may not be working. They've gotten laid off from work. And that will bring on depression along with it.
Right.
Is it
Right.
something that you can say to their spouse or their loved one that will help them in this transition or in this time that they're having right now?
Well, one of the things I always tell people, continue. You may have to change something up with the coronavirus being around. Continue to live. So if that means go hiking,
Mm-hmm.
place where you can be free and out in the open and hike, and because exercise is one of the natural things that helps with and anxiety.
Okay.
you know, um, Communicate with people, continue to socialize, even if you have to, do like we're doing now through video, but continue to socialize, because what people don't realize, it's simple as this: if someone smiles at you and you smile back, our brain releases positive hormones
Mm-hmm.
that makes us feel good. And
Mm-hmm.
if we're not getting that, socialization, if we're not socializing, then a lot of times what's happening is we're thinking about everything that's bad. And what happens is our brain releases negative hormones such as cortisol. And what that does is attacks our body.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I tell people is, continue, do not isolate, continue to try different avenues. My girlfriend, we would go to the park and we'll sit apart from each other and talk.
Mm-hmm.
But I found ways to continue to socialize because I know how important. I found ways to exercise, go to these parks where there's very few people at,
Yeah.
and run, walk, whatever you can do. But there are things, also, because of the cortisol in your body that gets pumped in your body from, negative thoughts,
Hmm.
worry, stress. A lot of times what I say, go to the doctor and get checked. Sometimes it could be a vitamin D deficiency that can actually, encourage the depression to go on.
Hmm.
So there are things that you can do that is natural, to help you with the depression and anxiety.
Okay. Now, with couples, is there something that you could tell them that's going to help them deal with, being cooped up and probably having that anxiety about, paying bills and where the next dinner is going to come from and dealing, with depression? Is there something you can tell them that will help them to, reconnect in a sense and stay strong in their marriage?
hmm Well, one of the things that I always tell people that, when you work through a hard time, you actually become empowered.
Hmm.
You actually start to believe you can get through anything. So I tell people all the time, just get through this. Now, there's some exercises that you can do. Sometimes what you can do is journal your thoughts, journal how you think you can solve a problem, and then come together and read each other what your thoughts are, and then work through them. A lot of times that will keep from the arguments, just reading what each other thinks, and then looking at, oh, well, you know what, that's great, but maybe we can do this as well. But coming together as a team, I always tell couples, you're a team, you're not enemies, and so you come together. I love talking about football. You need each other, to make those points, right? The
Hmm.
touchdown, you need each other. It's not one person. And so you have to think about it being a team.
Yeah. And I could not agree with you more because I think anybody in a relationship or a marriage should realize that they are a team. So when one, say, fumbles the ball, so let's take a football analogy. One fumbles the
Mhm.
ball, the other person's going to cover it up, pick it up, and take off running with it so that the team is still moving forward and not being held back. So I know for men, a lot of times that women, and this is no fault to women, but they're not as supportive, towards the man as, you think they should be. Is there something that you can help men and their wives or their significant other know and do to help each other become a solid team?
Well, one of the things that I do is I teach, how to communicate. Most people are not good listeners.
Hmm.
If you were to say something to your partner's already trying to figure out how to tell you something else. So they're not listening. They're ready to
Yeah.
rebuttal, right?
Yeah. Right.
Most of us think that way. So I teach them how to be a great listener. Also, how to be able to communicate what you feel. You know,
Hmm.
I teach them how to make sure there's no communication conflict. There's a lot of times I've had couples mad at each other and it was a misunderstanding.
Hmm.
I teach couples how to validate the feelings that they feel, because that's one of the things is people don't feel validated,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And then I teach them how to solve,
Hmm.
be solution based.
That's good.
Once you solve the problem, you feel good. So I have a way that I teach them to do that, and they feel good when they when they're
Yeah.
able to solve a problem.
And like you mentioned, they have to listen and not try to rebuttal as the person is talking or right after the person is talking. Sometimes you got to take it, digest it, and then come back after you done thought about it a little bit. Would you agree?
Yes, yes. Well, a lot of times, like I told you, journaling. A lot of
Hmm.
times I have them journal what they're thinking and what they're feeling, and then come together. And then usually by then, the emotions, the deep emotion, especially if there's a conflict, is out of the way. Because when you
Mm-hmm.
journal, you get all that anger and those thoughts out of the way,
Yeah.
and then you already come with a solution. So when you come in, you already have a solution, at least a thought that maybe both of you can agree on the solution.
Yeah. Well, let's flip it a little bit for a second. Is there something that you can tell men that can help their wife should they be depressed or have anxieties?
Well, I think I think for men is being okay about expressing their emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Because just to be honest with you, when men come in, most men sometimes they don't even know how to express their emotions.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times I'll actually have to teach them, or help them use words and figure out what they're truly feeling. And so being able to be open and vulnerable with their wives, yeah,
And
that's very, very important.
it is, but is there and I know that it depends on the wife
It
in
does.
regards, yeah, because if a man opens up and be vulnerable, that can sometimes makes the situation worse in a wife's eyes because she thinks he's weak or not the man that she married. He's not strong. He's not going to provide for the family. So that could, is there a way around that?
Well, usually when I get one, spouse to come in, I end
Mm-hmm.
up with the other. And a
Okay.
lot of times, what I end up doing is I'll see them together. We'll figure out what the problems are together. And then a lot of times the problems are different. So then I'll separate them, work on those problems, and give them tools to be better spouses.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll start going back and working together because we worked on those tools, calling people out their name, that doesn't work,
Right.
you know. And so I give them tools on how to themselves.
Yeah.
And also this is the father show, but with women, I tell them, how to lift your husband up.
Mm-hmm.
I let them know these things can destroy the marriage, and these things can lift the marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, if they haven't had that teaching, then they need the teaching. And so it just depends, like you said, it depends on the spouse.
Yeah.
It depends on, who they are, how they see things. And then I help them see things a little more clearer that would benefit the marriage instead of destroy the marriage.
Yeah. And that's so important. I went through it myself where my wife, ex-wife, former wife, I like to say more than ex-wife,
Mhm.
thought that there was a big difference in what she did and what I did, and it really, it really wasn't. And only things we really had to do is, as you mentioned earlier, was come together, work as a team, build this as a team. And I wish more couples, even before they get married, will understand what a marriage is and what a relationship is, that you are coming together to support each other. And if you end up, if one has anxieties or one has depression or both,
Mhm.
how you can help them through that and not tear them down because of it. And I'm sure you help a lot of couples with that as
Yeah.
well.
Well, a lot of times couples come in, because they're not able to get along. And then I find out there's anxiety, there's depression, there's something, that the foundation of the problem is not being treated,
And that's
you
why they
know.
have the problem.
Right, right. Sometimes we realize, okay, someone can't keep their job. Well, why can't they keep their job?
Hmm.
You know, if you're depressed and you can't get out of bed. There's people who can't get out of bed,
Mm-hmm.
or it takes them hours to get themselves out of bed, you know. And so you late for work and you lose your job, we have to take the depression.
Yeah. Well,
Or
Chandra,
if
I
mhm.
no, go ahead.
Or I was saying, if you have a lot of anxiety and you can't handle the anxiety on work at work, I've known people to walk out of work because they can't handle it because of the anxiety, the amount of anxiety. Well, you
Mm.
walk out of work, then you lose your job. And so a lot, but the couple is focused on losing the job, not
Mm-hmm.
what's going on with you that made you lose that job.
And that would be hard for the spouse, I think, if you are, living a paycheck to paycheck and barely making it on paycheck to paycheck, and then you have someone that keeps losing their job. It's still going to be hard for them. So coming in to talk to you, or would be, I think, a great idea. So you can give them pointers on how they can do that.
Right, right. And it's very difficult living with somebody with high anxiety, or, depression, major depressive disorder. It's very difficult. But usually what happens once the spouse, finds out that this is what's going on, then they
Mm-hmm.
usually, feel like, okay, we could do something about it. But a lot of times it's the frustration is because they have no idea, why does this person keep doing the things that they're doing?
Yeah. Now you mentioned earlier about, because what I was thinking of is, is this treatable, and how anxiety or depression is treatable. I know you mentioned working out is a very
Right.
good treatable way, a way of treating anxiety and depression. Are there any
Hmm.
other steps that they can take, or is, but I know there's medication, but before you get the medication, can you try working out and some other steps and also medication?
Hmm. Well, I'll start off with self-care. Most of us don't take the time to take care of ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
you know and so reducing the amount of stress. For example, I have people who, they're great, but they may have five different things that they're trying to do at one time. That's
Mm-hmm.
too stressful. But your environment, you want to take care of your environment. If your environment creates a lot of stress, that's something that you can control.
Mm.
You can
Yeah.
move and change that environment sometimes.
Okay.
Okay. Now, when the stress is within you, that's a little bit different. We do a lot of cognitive behavior therapy, your
Mm-hmm.
thought process. A lot of times, um, fear comes just from the thought. And then the
Mm.
thought just kind of runs away and continue, just won't stop. And so the body starts to react to that thought.
Mm.
And so we help them with their thoughts, you know. So one thing I do want to tell you is, when someone has had anxiety for a long time, or has had depression for a long time, a lot of times it can't be done naturally.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times what will happen, because believe it or not, it can destroy or damage the brain over time, because it's a chemical imbalance, and over
Mm.
time it can. And so sometimes we do have to do medication.
Okay.
And yeah, there's a time when I tell people, you know we've tried everything, we're going to have to do medication.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the quality of life is so important. If you're having suicidal thoughts constantly, you know that's a low quality of life.
Yeah.
And if you can take some medicine, I think it's worth it.
Yeah.
If you have children, it affects your children, it affects the people around you.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just low quality of life for yourself, but it's also for the people you love.
Yeah. You're right. And especially if you have children, and especially young kids, because they're watching you and they're learning from you. So if your behavior is not copacetic, then they're not. And that's what they're going to learn. And they don't even know why they're doing it.
And what's so good about being treated is a lot of times, we're able to, educate them, let them know sometimes it's genetic. And
Hmm.
I tell them, watch for your kids now. You catch it early.
Hmm. And I'm
'Cause
glad you mentioned that because I did read that myself when I was kind of studying up on this a little bit. That is genetic.
it
And so
can be. It
yeah,
can
so
be
you can
from
pass
trauma
it. Yeah. So you can pass it
losses.
down. Uh huh.
Mhm. Yeah, but you can pass it down. Yes.
Wow. That's something. All
It
right.
is, and it's important. I see it all the time. I'll ask, about, family members,
Mm-hmm.
and before you know it, yeah, grandma, mom, and then, so it allows you to watch your kids and be able to figure out, did I pass it on to my child? And if I
Yeah.
did, I'll be able to catch it early.
Yeah. Now, let me ask. So, if it's passing on through genetics, or is it passing it on through the kid watching you and
It
then
it can it
mimicking
can
you?
it can be learned behavior.
Yeah.
And it could be, genetic by itself.
Okay.
It could be a combination.
The both.
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right.
That's a good question. Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, Chandra, thank you so much for providing so much information in such a short period of time on this anxiety disorder. But I want the audience to know how they can get a hold of you. I want men to know that they can come and see you, call you, and get, and I hate using the word help, but because we hate that word, but have someone that they can talk to, talk this through with. So tell
Mhm.
the audience how they can get a hold of you.
Well, I'm based in Atlanta, Georgia, and my number is 770-875-2595, or communitycarecounseling@gmail.com. And we would love for you to call and get some of your questions answered, and we can direct you whether we can see you or someone else.
Excellent. That's excellent. So I hope the men out there will definitely, if they're experiencing this anxiety and or depression, please get out there, call Chandra, let her know, and somebody at Community Care Counseling can help you get the help that you need, and so that you can live the best life that you can possibly live. And that's what we want. I know Chandra wants that for you. I want it for
Yes,
you as well.
it's
So
a joy for me to help someone. Yes.
yeah. Well, Chandra, thank you so much. I'm gonna close out the show real quick. And so, ladies and gentlemen, let me change that. I'm not. How's that? That's better. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today on The Father Show. And I'm your host, Mike Thompson. And today, I hope you really learned something, and I hope you will take advantage of it, because I know with the pandemic out here, a lot of people are struggling, trying to make ends meet and trying to still keep their head above water, physically, emotionally, financially, and everything. So, if you need someone to talk to, please reach out and have someone to help you, uh, talk you through this, and get your help that you need. If you need additional resources, please go to the Father Show with MikeThompson.com. Click on resources, and one, you'll find Chandra's information there, but you will also find other counselors in your state that are there with you as well, so you can get the help that you need when you need it. So you can watch this show and others on our Facebook page, on our The Father Show with MikeThompson.com website. And while you're there, you want to check out the resources, check out the other shows that we have. And if you are watching us on YouTube channel. You can catch us on there. Please don't forget to subscribe, like us, and share it, and click that notification bell so that way you'll know when the next time we have a show, which is every week. And you can also listen to our show if you get real busy and you don't have time. You can listen to our show on our Facebook page, on iHeartRadio, Pandora, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, Amazon Music, and Audible. So you can get this information and make sure you're getting the help that you need. So we want you to be having the best life that you can. So thank you for joining us this week. Until next week, I want to say stay safe and God bless.